welcome to today's Explainer. Our modern world is just packed with incredible scientific discoveries, right? Well, all this progress actually lets us pull back the curtain on something huge: how our individual human behavior scales all the way up to global systems. We interact with these economic systems literally every single day, mostly without even realizing it. So let's jump right in and decode the architecture of modern life.
But first, all of this scientific progress kind of forces us to ask a really fundamental question. What exactly makes something a science? I mean, at its core, a science is simply a systematic body of knowledge. But how do we actually categorize all this human knowledge and the discoveries shaping our world?
Okay, let's break this down. There are basically two main branches. On one side, we've got the natural sciences. Think math, physics, chemistry. These are the exact sciences. Their laws are universally acceptable, and you can test their validity rigorously in a lab under strictly controlled conditions. But on the other side, we have the social sciences. These are abstract, behavioral sciences. You can't exactly put human behavior in a test tube, right? Whether it's psychology, looking at our mental states, or sociology, examining us as members of society, these fields study human tendencies. Their laws aren't absolute universal rules. They're more like generalized statements about how we humans tend to act.
So here's our map for this explainer. 1. The science of human behavior. 2. Defining the economic engine. 3. Microeconomics, the individual view. 4. The water diamond paradox. And 5. Macroeconomics, the big picture.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the science of human behavior. The specific social science we're dissecting today is economics. Now, the famous economist Paul Samuelson actually called economics the queen of social sciences. And, while we usually think of economics as being all about Wall Street or banking, its roots are way more personal. The term itself comes from the Greek word oikonomia, which literally just means management of the household. At its absolute core, economics deals with a universal human problem. How do we satisfy our absolutely unlimited wants using our very limited means? Moving right along to Section 2, defining the economic engine.
It's fascinating because economic thought has evolved so much over time. Back in the 18th century, the classical school, led by Adam Smith, who you've probably heard called the father of economics, they focused entirely on wealth. To them, economics was strictly the science of acquiring wealth. Fast forward to the 19th and early 20th centuries, and the neoclassical thinker Alfred Marshall shifted the spotlight to human welfare. He argued it wasn't just about money. It was the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life, focusing on our material well-being. And finally, in the modern era, Lionel Robbins introduced a scarcity-oriented definition. This is the big one today. It basically says economics studies human behavior as a relationship between ends, which are unlimited wants, and scarce means, which have alternative uses.
Let's zoom in a bit for Section 3, microeconomics, the individual view.
In microeconomics, literally everything revolves around our wants. And in economics, a want isn't just a passing thought. It's a feeling of a lack of satisfaction that actually drives us to take action. And man, these wants are relentless. They're unlimited. You satisfy one and boom, another immediately pops up. They're recurring. We always get hungry again, right? And crucially, they're all over the place. What you want differs based on your age, your gender, personal preferences, the seasons, and your cultural background. They just multiply endlessly.
Think about how this plays out in real life. A little kid's primary want is probably a toy, but a young adult, they want a motorcycle for transportation and independence. An older person might just prioritize a really comfortable chair and a good book. Their chronological age completely dictates their economic wants. And it's not just age. When the weather shifts, our immediate economic needs change instantly. A sudden downpour turns an umbrella from a complete afterthought into an absolute necessity. Our desires are constantly in flux.
This brings us to Section 4, the water diamond paradox. Okay, to grasp this paradox, we first need to get that value has two totally distinct meanings in economics. First up is value in use. This is the intrinsic worth or usefulness of something. Take sunshine, for example. Nobody pays a price for sunshine, but its worth for keeping us all alive is basically immeasurable. We call that a free good. On the flip side, we have value in exchange. This is the worth of something expressed in terms of money or another commodity. A TV or a car commands a price, which makes it an economic good. Now here is where it gets super interesting. Think about water. Water has an unbelievably high value in use. I mean, you literally need it to survive, but a very low value in exchange. It's incredibly cheap. Meanwhile, a diamond has a very low value in use. You can't eat it, it won't keep you warm, but it commands a massive value in exchange. Why? Scarcity. Value in the market isn't just about how useful a thing is, it's heavily dictated by how rare it is compared to our demand for it. And this whole concept of scarcity is foundational to how economists define wealth. Because in strict economic terms, wealth isn't just a giant vault of cash. For something to actually count as wealth, it has to hit 4 specific marks. It must have utility, meaning it satisfies a want. It must be scarce, meaning supply is limited relative to demand. It has to be transferable from one person to another, either physically like handing over a car or notionally like signing a land deed. And finally, it must possess externality. It has to exist outside the human body. So, weirdly enough, personal inborn qualities, like having an amazing singing voice or being really efficient, aren't considered wealth in strict economics, simply because you can't transfer your vocal cords or your work ethic to someone else. All right, let's zoom back out for Section 5, Macroeconomics, the big picture. To bridge this gap from the individual to the whole, we look to the economist Kenneth Boulding. He perfectly summed it up, saying macroeconomics deals not with individual quantities as such, but with the aggregates, not with individual incomes, but with the national income, not with individual output, but with the national output. That right there completely shifts our perspective from a microscope to a telescope. We're no longer looking at one single person's wants, we are looking at the combined behavior of an entire nation. When you look through that macroeconomic telescope, you start seeing these massive aggregate forces at play. You see national income, which is the total economic performance of a nation, the aggregate monetary value of all the final goods and services produced in a given year. You look at overall savings, which is total income set aside for the future, and investment, which turns those savings into actual capital assets like factories and machinery. And you see trade cycles, because when millions of individual economic choices pull together, they create huge fluctuations, swinging entire economies back and forth between inflation, where general prices just keep rising, and depression, where prices and overall economic activity absolutely plummet. So what is the ultimate goal of all this macroeconomic activity? Is it just about getting bigger, or is it actually about getting better? Well, there's a really vital distinction here between economic growth and economic development. Economic growth is a pretty narrow quantitative concept. It just means an increase in the real national income of a country over time. Basically, the country is bringing in more money. But economic development, that is much broader and it's qualitative. It means economic growth plus progressive changes in the things that actually determine human well-being, like major improvements in education and healthcare. Honestly, it is entirely possible for a country to have economic growth without ever actually achieving true economic development. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. Looking around at our modern world, does our current society focus way too much on quantitative economic growth at the expense of qualitative economic development? Are we so obsessed with the sheer size of the national income that we're losing sight of the education, health, and well-being of the actual individuals who make it up? It's a massive question, and it all traces back to the foundational mechanics we've explored today. I really hope this deep dive has given you a fresh, powerful lens to view the world through. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.